The sound of pickaxes striking rock echoed through the narrow tunnel as Owen Braddock rode into Cannon City, Colorado on a scorching afternoon in June of 1883, unaware that his life was about to change forever when he heard a woman's scream cut through the dusty air near the abandoned silver mine on the edge of town. Owen had been riding for 3 weeks straight, moving from one cattle drive to another, his weathered face bearing the marks of 26 years spent under the merciless sun. His horse, a sturdy chestnut mare named Copper, sensed his tension as they approached the source of the commotion. The scream came again, followed by a man's harsh voice and the unmistakable crack of a whip against stone. He dismounted quickly, tying Copper to a scraggly juniper tree before making his way toward the mine entrance. The Colorado sun beat down mercilessly, and sweat trickled down his spine beneath his dusty shirt. As he approached, he could hear multiple voices now, all male except for one that pleaded desperately for water. Owen crouched behind a cluster of boulders near the mine entrance and observed the scene before him. 3 rough-looking men stood guard outside, while another 2 emerged from the darkness of the tunnel, dragging what appeared to be a heavy cart filled with ore. But it was what he saw next that made his blood run cold. Behind them, stumbling in the bright sunlight, came 5 women, their faces streaked with dirt and exhaustion, their hands raw and bleeding from the work they had clearly been forced to do. The youngest could not have been more than 19 or 20, with matted dark hair and torn clothing that hung loosely on her thin frame. The oldest appeared to be in her 40s, her face gaunt but defiant. All of them wore expressions that spoke of fear, exhaustion, and desperation. The man with the whip, a burly figure with a scarred face and greasy black hair, cracked it again near the youngest woman's feet. "Move faster, or you will not get any water tonight," he snarled in a thick accent that Owen could not quite place. "Mr. Vance wants twice as much ore tomorrow, so you better work harder." Owen felt rage building in his chest like a summer thunderstorm. He had seen many injustices in his years traveling the frontier, but this was something different. These women were being worked like slaves, forced into dangerous mine labor that even most men would struggle to endure. He stood up slowly, his hand instinctively moving to the Colt revolver at his hip, though he hoped he would not need to use it. "Seems to me like those ladies could use a break," Owen called out, stepping into view. His voice was calm, but carried the weight of authority that came from years of handling difficult situations. The 5 guards spun around, their hands moving to their weapons. The man with the whip narrowed his eyes, sizing up Owen with obvious contempt. "This is private property, cowboy. Move along before you get hurt." Owen walked forward slowly, his boots crunching on the rocky ground. "Private property does not give you the right to force people to work against their will. These women look like they need water, rest, and medical attention. So here's what is going to happen. You are going to let them go right now, and then you are going to explain to the sheriff exactly what you have been doing out here." The scarred man laughed, a harsh sound that held no humor. "You think you can tell us what to do? There are 5 of us and 1 of you. Maybe you should learn to count before you go playing hero." "I can count just fine," Owen replied, his voice dropping lower. "I count 5 men who are about to make the biggest mistake of their lives. No one forces anyone while I am here, so let them go." The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. The women had stopped moving, watching the confrontation with wide eyes. Owen could see the hope beginning to flicker in their exhausted faces, mixed with fear that this stranger might get himself killed trying to help them. The scarred man made the first move, reaching for his gun. But Owen was faster. His Colt cleared leather in a blur of motion, and the crack of his shot echoed across the canyon. The bullet struck the ground inches from the scarred man's feet, sending up a spray of dust and rock fragments. Before anyone else could react, Owen had already cocked his revolver again, this time aiming it directly at the leader's chest. "The next one does not miss," Owen said quietly. "Now drop your weapons, all of you." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then, slowly, the scarred man unbuckled his gun belt and let it fall to the ground. The others followed suit, their faces twisted with anger, but showing enough sense to know when they were outmatched. Owen had a reputation in these parts, though these men clearly had not known it. He was known for being quick on the draw and quicker with his thinking, and he had never lost a standoff yet. "Ladies, come over here behind me," Owen instructed, keeping his eyes and gun trained on the men. Slowly now, and stay together." The women moved quickly despite their exhaustion, hurrying to get behind Owen's protective presence. As they passed him, he could smell the stench of unwashed bodies and see the bruises and cuts that covered their exposed skin. The youngest one stumbled, and the woman next to her caught her arm, helping her stay upright. Once they were all safely behind him, Owen spoke again. "Now, you five are going to walk back into town, straight to the sheriff's office. I will be following right behind you with these ladies, and if any of you so much as looks back at us wrong, I will not hesitate to shoot. Understood?" The scarred man spat on the ground. "Mr. Vance will hear about this. You just made a powerful enemy, Cowboy." "I have made powerful enemies before," Owen replied. "I am still here. They are not. Now walk." The 5 men began trudging toward town, their shoulders slumped in defeat. Owen gathered the women around him, noting how they clustered together for protection and comfort. The youngest one looked up at him with eyes the color of sage after rain, and he felt something shift in his chest. Despite the dirt and exhaustion, he could see she was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with conventional prettiness and everything to do with inner strength that refused to be broken. "Can you all walk?" he asked gently. "It is about 2 miles into town." "We can walk," the oldest woman said, her voice hoarse but firm. "We have been walking for weeks. Thank you for what you did. I thought we were going to die in that mine." "What are your names?" Owen asked as they began the slow journey back to Cannon City, keeping a careful distance behind the 5 guards. The oldest woman spoke first. "I am Martha Green. This is Sarah, Elizabeth, Catherine, and Zara." She pointed to each woman in turn, ending with the youngest, the one with the sage-colored eyes. "We were all traveling to California when our wagon train was attacked 6 weeks ago. These men killed the others and took us. They have been forcing us to work the mine ever since. Zara Green." The name seemed to suit her, Owen thought, exotic and strong, like the woman herself. She had not spoken yet, but her eyes held his for a moment before she looked away, color rising in her dirt-streaked cheeks. "My name is Owen Braddock," he told them. "I'm a cowboy, mostly work cattle drives, but I do some bounty hunting when the work is slow. You are all safe now, I promise you that." The walk into town took nearly an hour because the women were so exhausted and dehydrated. Owen stopped twice to let them rest in the shade of rock formations, sharing the water from his canteen among them. Zara drank last, taking only a small sip before trying to pass the canteen back. "Drink more," Owen urged. "You need it more than I do." "The others need it more," she replied, her voice soft but with an underlying firmness that suggested she was used to putting others first. "I am younger and stronger." "You are also half dead on your feet," Owen observed. "Drink, please. There's a creek just up ahead where I can refill the canteen." She did as he asked, and he watched her throat work as she swallowed, noting the delicate line of her jaw beneath the grime. When she handed the canteen back, their fingers touched briefly, and Owen felt an electric current run up his arm. Zara must have felt it too, because she pulled her hand back quickly, tucking it into her torn skirt. By the time they reached Cannon City, a small crowd had gathered in the dusty main street. The 5 guards had apparently tried to make a run for it, but had been stopped by several townspeople who had recognized them as part of Vance's operation. Sheriff Thomas Reynolds, a barrel-chested man in his 50s with a thick gray mustache, was already waiting outside his office. "Owen Braddock," the sheriff called out as they approached. "Should have known you would be in the middle of this. These men claim you attacked them without provocation." "These men are liars," Owen replied calmly. "I found them forcing these 5 women to work the silver mine out past Canyon Ridge. The women say they were taken from a wagon train attack 6 weeks ago. There are bodies that need to be found and buried properly, and these men need to be charged with murder, kidnapping, and slavery." The sheriff's expression darkened as he looked at the women, taking in their condition. "Is this true, madam?" he asked Martha. "Every word," Martha confirmed. "They killed 17 people, including my husband and my son. They took us because they said they needed workers for the mine and did not want to pay wages. They said if we tried to escape, they would hunt us down and kill us slowly." A murmur of anger rippled through the gathered crowd. Cannon City was a rough town, but it had its standards, and what these men had done crossed every line. The sheriff turned to his deputies who had been watching the proceedings with grim faces. "Lock 'em up," Sheriff Reynolds ordered. All 5 of them, and send a telegram to the federal marshal in Denver. This is going to need more than just local justice." He turned back to Owen and the women. "Ladies, we need to get you to the doctor and get you cleaned up. The hotel has rooms available, and the town will cover the cost for now. We will need your statements about what happened, but that can wait until you have had some rest and medical attention." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Dr. Harrison, a kind man in his 60s, examined each of the women and treated their wounds. Zara had infected cuts on her hands and a badly bruised shoulder from where one of the guards had struck her with the handle of a shovel. The doctor wrapped her hands in clean white bandages and gave her a tin of salve to prevent further infection. Owen waited outside the doctor's office, despite the sheriff's suggestion that he should get some rest himself. He told himself he was waiting to make sure all the women were properly cared for, but he knew that was only part of the truth. He wanted to see Zara again, to make sure she was all right, to hear her voice without the fear and exhaustion that had clouded it before. When she finally emerged, she looked like a different person. The hotel owner's wife, Mrs. Peterson, had provided her with a simple blue cotton dress that actually fit her properly, and she had washed the dirt and blood from her face and hair. Her dark hair fell in damp waves past her shoulders, and her eyes, no longer surrounded by grime and exhaustion, were even more striking than Owen had realized. She was 22 years old, the doctor had told him, though she carried herself with the maturity of someone much older. "Mr. Braddock," she said, stopping when she saw him waiting, "you did not have to stay." "Call me Owen," he said, standing up from the bench where he had been sitting. "And I wanted to make sure you were all right. All of you," he added, though his eyes stayed on her face. "Thanks to you, we are," Zara replied. "The doctor says we will all recover fully with rest and proper food. I do not know how to thank you for what you did. If you had not come when you did, I do not think we would have lasted much longer." "You do not need to thank me," Owen said. "Any decent person would have done the same." "But not everyone would have stood up to 5 armed men alone," Zara countered. "That took courage. Or craziness. I'm not sure which." Owen smiled, the first real smile he had managed in days. "Probably a bit of both. My mother always said I had more courage than sense." "Is she still alive? Your mother?" Zara asked. "No, she passed 5 years ago. Fever took her one winter. My father died when I was 15, cattle stampede. I have been on my own since then, mostly." Owen heard himself sharing more than he usually did with strangers, but something about Zara made him want to open up, to let her see beyond the tough cowboy exterior to the lonely man beneath. "I am sorry," Zara said softly. "I lost my mother when I was 17. My father and brother died in the wagon train attack, so now I'm alone too." They stood in silence for a moment, 2 people who had suffered loss and loneliness, recognizing something of themselves in each other. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, and the air was beginning to cool after the scorching heat of the day. "You are not alone now," Owen said finally. "You have the other women, and you have the whole town of Cannon City supporting you, and you have me, if you want. As a friend, I mean." Zara looked up at him, and he saw something flicker in those sage-colored eyes. "I would like that very much, Owen." Over the next 2 weeks, as the women recovered and the legal proceedings against their captors moved forward, Owen found himself spending more and more time with Zara. He had originally planned to leave Cannon City after a few days, but he kept finding reasons to stay. He told himself it was to make sure justice was properly served, to ensure the women were truly safe, but he knew he was fooling no one, least of all himself. Zara had been staying at the hotel with the other women, but she spent her days helping out at the general store to earn money for supplies. She was planning to continue on to California once she was strong enough, she said, to fulfill the dream that her family had died trying to achieve. Owen understood that drive, that need to honor the dead by completing what they had started, but the thought of her leaving made something ache deep in his chest. They fell into a pattern of meeting for dinner each evening at the hotel restaurant. Owen would tell her stories of his travels, of cattle drives through thunderstorms and nights spent sleeping under more stars than anyone could count. Zara would share memories of her childhood in Missouri, of her mother's garden and her father's laugh, and the way her little brother used to catch fireflies in jars on summer evenings. "Do you ever think about settling down?" Zara asked him one evening as they sat on the hotel porch watching the sunset. "Stopping the wandering and finding a place to call home?" Owen considered the question carefully. I used to think I was not the settling type, that I needed to keep moving or I would suffocate. But lately I've been wondering if maybe I was just looking for the right reason to stay put. And have you found it? Zara asked, her voice soft. The right reason? He turned to look at her, at the way the fading sunlight caught in her dark hair and made her eyes glow like jewels. I think maybe I have. The air between them seemed to shimmer with unspoken words and feelings that neither of them was quite brave enough to voice yet. Zara's cheeks flushed pink, and she looked down at her bandaged hands, which were healing well, but still bore the marks of her ordeal. Owen, I need to tell you something, she said quietly. I care about you. More than I should, probably, given that we have only known each other for 2 weeks. But after everything that happened, after being so close to death for so long, I do not want to waste time pretending I do not feel what I feel. Owen's heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. What do you feel, Zara? She looked up at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I feel like I have been waiting my whole life to meet you. Like everything that happened, as terrible as it was, led me here to this moment. And I know that sounds foolish and romantic and probably crazy, but it is the truth. Owen reached out and took her bandaged hand gently in his. It does not sound crazy at all, because I feel the exact same way. From the moment I saw you stumbling out of that mine, something in me recognized something in you, like we were 2 pieces of the same puzzle finally finding each other. But I'm supposed to go to California, Zara said, though her hand remained in his. That was the plan. That was what my family wanted. What do you want? Owen asked. Not what your family wanted, not what you think you should want. What does your heart want? Zara was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the darkening sky where the first stars were beginning to appear. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. My heart wants to stay here with you. But I'm scared, Owen. I'm scared of wanting something so much after losing everything I ever loved. Owen squeezed her hand gently. I'm scared too. I've been alone for so long that I forgot what it felt like to want to share my life with someone. But I would rather be scared with you than safe and alone without you. Zara turned to him, and this time the tears spilled over, running down her cheeks. But she was smiling through them, a radiant expression that made Owen's breath catch in his throat. Then I will stay. If you are sure you want me to stay, I will. I have never been more sure of anything in my life, Owen said, and then he leaned forward and kissed her. It was a gentle kiss, tender and sweet, full of promise and hope in the beginning of something beautiful. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling, and the world seemed brighter somehow, full of possibilities that had not existed just moments before. The trial of the 5 men who had kidnapped and enslaved the women took place 3 weeks later, with a federal judge presiding. Owen and Zara sat together in the courtroom, her hand in his, as Martha and the other women gave their testimony. The evidence was overwhelming, and the jury took less than an hour to return a verdict of guilty on all counts. The men were sentenced to hang, a fate that none of the townspeople mourned. During those weeks, Owen and Zara's relationship deepened and grew. He learned that she loved reading, especially poetry, and that she had a beautiful singing voice that she was shy about sharing. She learned that he could whittle intricate animals out of wood and that he had a dry sense of humor that could make her laugh even on difficult days. They went on long walks through the countryside around Cannon City, and Owen showed her the beauty of Colorado, the red rock formations, and the way the mountains rose up in the distance like ancient guardians. Martha and the other 3 women decided to stay in Cannon City as well. The town had embraced them, offering them work and housing and a fresh start. Sarah took a job at the schoolhouse teaching children, Elizabeth began working at the hotel, Catherine opened a small bakery, and Martha became the housekeeper for Dr. Harrison, who was recently widowed and needed the help. They formed a tight-knit group, bonded by their shared trauma and survival, and they welcomed Owen into their circle as the man who had saved their lives. One evening in late August, Owen took Zara on a picnic to a spot overlooking the Arkansas River. The water sparkled in the sunlight, and the air was filled with the scent of sage and wildflowers. They ate cold chicken and fresh bread from Catherine's bakery and drank cool water from the river. After they had eaten, Owen pulled a small wooden box from his pocket. I made this for you, he said, handing it to her. Open it." Zara opened the box carefully and gasped. Inside was a ring, hand-carved from a single piece of silver ore, polished until it gleamed. It was not fancy or elaborate, but it was beautiful in its simplicity, and she could see the care and love that had gone into making it. "Zara Green, I know we have not known each other for very long by most people's standards," Owen began, his voice steady despite his nervousness. "But in the time we have had together, you have become the most important thing in my world. You have shown me what it means to have courage and grace even in the darkest times. You have made me want to be a better man, to build a life worth living instead of just passing through. So I am asking you, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to make you as happy as you have made me?" Zara's eyes filled with tears again, but she was laughing and crying at the same time as she threw her arms around his neck. "Yes, yes, of course I will marry you." Owen slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and she kissed him back with all the love and passion she had been holding inside. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless and grinning like fools. "When?" Zara asked. "When should we get married?" "As soon as possible," Owen replied. "I have waited my whole life to find you. I do not want to wait another day longer than necessary to make you my wife." They were married 2 weeks later in the small church at the center of Cannon City. Martha and the other women stood up as Zara's attendants, and Sheriff Reynolds served as Owen's best man. The whole town turned out for the ceremony, grateful to Owen for his heroism, and happy to see such a love match between two people who clearly adored each other. Zara wore a simple white dress that Elizabeth had sewn for her, with wildflowers woven into her dark hair. Owen wore his best suit, brushed clean and pressed, looking handsome and nervous and desperately in love. When the preacher asked if he would take Zara as his wife, his "I do" rang out clear and strong. When Zara said the same, her voice was soft but sure, and the love in her eyes was clear for everyone to see. "You may kiss your bride," the preacher announced, and Owen did, dipping Zara back dramatically and making the congregation laugh and cheer. When he set her upright again, both of them were laughing too, their joy infectious and bright. The reception was held at the hotel, with food and music and dancing that lasted well into the night. Owen and Zara danced together, not caring that they were not very good at it, just happy to be in each other's arms. At one point, Martha pulled them aside with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said to Owen. "Thank you for giving us all a second chance at life. And Zara, I am so happy you found love after everything we went through. You deserve all the happiness in the world." "We all do," Zara replied, hugging the older woman. "And we are going to build good lives here, all of us. We are going to show that darkness does not win, that love and hope and courage are stronger than cruelty and violence." As the night wore on and the guests began to drift away, Owen and Zara slipped out of the reception and walked to their new home. Owen had used the reward money he had received for capturing the kidnappers to buy a small house on the edge of town, with a view of the mountains and enough land for a few horses and a garden. It was not much, but it was theirs, and it was perfect. Inside, Owen lit the lamps while Zara looked around their home with wondering eyes. It was furnished simply but comfortably, with a large bed in the bedroom and a rocking chair by the fireplace in the main room. On the mantel, Owen had placed a photograph he had commissioned of the two of them, taken just days before the wedding. In it, Zara was smiling, her eyes bright with joy, and Owen was looking at her with such love that it made her heart ache every time she saw it. "Welcome home, Mrs. Braddock," Owen said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Mrs. Braddock," Zara repeated, testing out the name. "I like the sound of that." Owen turned her around to face him, his hands coming up to cup her face gently. "I love you, Zara, more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone. You saved me just as much as I saved you." "I love you too," Zara whispered, "with everything I am." They made love that night with a tenderness and passion that spoke of deep connection and abiding love. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the moonlight streaming through the window, talking quietly about their dreams for the future. Owen wanted to buy more land and start a small ranch. Zara wanted to plant a garden and maybe start a family when the time was right. They talked until they fell asleep in each other's arms, safe and loved and home. The months that followed were some of the happiest of either of their lives. Owen found work managing cattle for a local rancher, earning enough money to start buying his own herd. Zara planted her garden, coaxing vegetables and flowers from the Colorado soil, and she began teaching reading and writing to children in the evenings at the church. They made friends in town, became respected members of the community, and built a life together that was rich in love, if not in material wealth. By the following spring, Zara discovered she was pregnant. She told Owen one evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, the same way they had on the night they had first confessed their feelings for each other. Owen's face lit up with such pure joy that Zara started crying happy tears. "We are going to have a baby?" he asked, his voice full of wonder. "We are going to be parents?" "We are," Zara confirmed, laughing through her tears. "Are you happy?" "Happy?" Owen pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "Zara, I am beyond happy. I am terrified and excited and grateful and 100 other things I do not even have words for. We are going to have a family." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Zara was sick in the mornings for the first few months. Owen hovered over her constantly, driving her crazy with his worry and making her laugh with his sometimes misguided attempts to help. Martha and the other women rallied around her, sharing advice and making baby clothes and preparing her for what was to come. On a cold November evening in 1884, Zara went into labor. Dr. Harrison was called, and Owen paced the floor of their small house for hours while Zara worked to bring their child into the world. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he heard the thin wail of a newborn baby, and the doctor emerged with a smile on his weathered face. "Congratulations, Owen. You have a son." Owen rushed into the bedroom to find Zara propped up against the pillows, exhausted but glowing with happiness, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. Their son had dark hair like his mother and already possessed a powerful set of lungs. "He is perfect," Owen whispered, sitting on the edge of the bed and looking down at his son with awe. "Zara, he is absolutely perfect." "What should we name him?" Zara asked. They had discussed names during the pregnancy but had not settled on anything definite. Now, looking at his son's tiny face, Owen knew exactly what felt right. "James," he said, "after your father. James Owen Braddock." Zara's eyes filled with tears. Her father's name had been James, and the fact that Owen would honor his memory by naming their son after him meant more to her than she could express. "James," she repeated. "Yes, that is perfect." The early years of parenthood were challenging but deeply rewarding. James was a healthy, happy baby who grew into a curious and energetic toddler. Owen proved to be a devoted father, patient and playful, teaching his son to ride before he could barely walk and telling him stories about the wide world beyond Cannon City. Zara was a natural mother, somehow managing to balance caring for James with her garden and her teaching and her marriage. Their small ranch grew slowly but steadily. Owen's reputation as an honest, hard-working man spread, and he was able to buy more cattle and eventually hire a young man named Thomas to help with the work. The garden flourished under Zara's care, providing vegetables for their table and extra to sell in town. They were not wealthy by any means, but they had enough, and they had each other, and that was more than sufficient. When James was 2 years old, Zara discovered she was pregnant again. This time, she gave birth to twin daughters in the spring of 1887. They named them Sarah, after one of the women who had survived the mine ordeal with her, and Grace, simply because it seemed to suit the tiny, delicate baby girl. Owen was outnumbered now, he joked, but he would not have it any other way. The house seemed to burst at the seams with noise and life and love. James took his role as big brother seriously, trying to help with his baby sisters even though he was barely more than a baby himself. Owen built an addition onto the house, adding 2 more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. Zara's garden expanded to accommodate the growing family's needs. They worked from dawn until dusk most days, but they did it together, and that made all the difference. Martha and the other women remained close friends, forming a support network that helped all of them through the challenges of frontier life. Sarah, who had become the schoolteacher, taught James to read when he was just 4 years old. Elizabeth and Catherine took turns helping Zara with the twins when she was overwhelmed. They celebrated holidays together, mourned losses together, and rejoiced in victories together. They had become a chosen family, bound not by blood, but by shared experience and genuine affection. In 1889, Owen received an offer to sell his cattle operation to a larger ranch consortium for a substantial profit. After discussing it with Zara, they decided to accept. The money allowed them to buy more land and build a proper ranch house with enough room for their growing family and any future additions. The new house had a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides, a modern kitchen with a cast-iron stove, and a parlor with large windows that let in the Colorado sunshine. On the day they moved into the new house, Zara stood in the parlor and looked around with tears in her eyes. "Do you remember the day we met?" she asked Owen, who was attempting to corral 3 excited children who wanted to explore every inch of their new home. "Every detail," Owen replied, coming to stand beside her. "I remember thinking you were the bravest person I had ever seen, stumbling out of that mine with your head held high, even though you were half dead from exhaustion. I remember thinking you were either a hero or insane to take on 5 armed men by yourself," Zara said with a smile. "I am still not sure which." "Definitely insane," Owen said, "but it was worth it. Everything that happened, every risk I took, led me to this moment, to you, to our children, to this life we have built. I would do it all again in a heartbeat." Zara leaned her head against his shoulder. "I was so broken when you found me. I thought I had lost everything, that there was nothing left for me in this world. But you showed me that there was still hope, still love, still a future worth fighting for. You gave me back my life, Owen." "No," Owen corrected gently. "You saved yourself. I just helped open the door. Everything else, all of this, you built with your own strength and courage and determination." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching their children play, feeling the weight of how far they had come and the gratitude for every moment that had brought them here. Outside, the Colorado sun shone bright and warm, and the mountains stood eternal in the distance, silent witnesses to the love story that had unfolded in their shadow. The years continued to pass, marked by both challenges and triumphs. In 1891, Zara gave birth to another son, whom they named Daniel. He had Owen's blue eyes and easy smile, and from the beginning, he was fascinated by anything mechanical. As he grew, he would spend hours taking apart and reassembling anything he could get his hands on, much to his father's amusement and occasional frustration. James grew into a serious, responsible young man who shared his father's love of horses and cattle. The twins, Sarah and Grace, were as different as 2 girls could be. Sarah was quiet and bookish, always found with her nose in a book, while Grace was wild and adventurous, constantly getting into scrapes that her older brother had to rescue her from. Daniel was the peacemaker, somehow able to mediate between his siblings and keep the household running smoothly. Owen and Zara's marriage deepened with each passing year, the initial passion mellowing into something even stronger, a partnership built on mutual respect, unwavering support, and enduring love. They had arguments, of course. Owen's tendency to take risks occasionally clashed with Zara's more cautious nature, and Zara's perfectionism sometimes frustrated Owen's more laid-back approach. But they had learned early on to talk through their differences, to listen to each other, and to always remember that they were on the same team. In 1895, when James was 11 years old, a telegram arrived that would bring their past rushing back into the present. Mr. Vance, the man who had been behind the kidnapping operation all those years ago, had escaped from federal prison and was believed to be headed toward Colorado. Sheriff Reynolds, now graying and nearing retirement, came out to the ranch personally to warn them. "I do not want to alarm you unnecessarily," the sheriff said, sitting in their parlor with his hat in his hands. But Vance swore vengeance against Owen when he was arrested. He blamed Owen for destroying his operation and getting his men hanged. "I want you both to be careful, to keep your eyes open, and to let me know immediately if you see anything suspicious." Owen's jaw tightened with anger and worry. He had thought the chapter of their lives was closed, that the danger had passed years ago. But apparently, the past was not ready to let them go so easily. "I will keep the family safe," he promised the sheriff, "whatever it takes." For the next few weeks, tension hung over the ranch like a storm cloud. Owen kept his rifle close and taught James to shoot just in case. Zara tried to maintain normalcy for the younger children, but she was scared in a way she had not been in years. She had nightmares about the mine, about being trapped and helpless again, and she would wake up in the middle of the night, her heart racing, until Owen's arms pulled her close and reminded her that she was safe. The confrontation came on a warm evening in September. Owen had just finished his chores and was heading back to the house for supper when he saw a figure standing by the barn. Even in the fading light, he recognized Mr. Vance. The man had aged badly in prison, his face gaunt and lined, but his eyes held the same cold cruelty that Owen remembered from years ago. "Braddock," Vance called out, "we have unfinished business, you and I." Owen stopped walking, his hand moving slowly toward the gun at his hip. "You should have stayed in prison, Vance. There is nothing for you here except more trouble." "You destroyed everything I built," Vance snarled. "My operation, my reputation, my freedom. Because of you, I spent 12 years rotting in that cell. Now I'm going to take everything from you the way you took everything from me." From inside the house, Owen could hear the sounds of his family preparing for dinner. Zara's voice calling the children to wash their hands, James laughing at something Daniel said, the twins arguing over who would set the table. Everything that mattered to him was inside that house, and he would die before he let Vance harm any of them. "This is between you and me," Owen said, his voice steady. "Leave my family out of it. You want revenge, fine. But it ends here, tonight, just the two of us." Vance laughed, a harsh sound that held no humor. "Why would I do that? You did not just hurt me, Braddock. You took away the thing that made me money, made me powerful. So I am going to take away the things that make your life worth living." He moved toward the house, but Owen was faster. He drew his gun and fired, the bullet striking the ground at Vance's feet. "Stop right there, or the next one goes in your chest." Vance stopped, but he was grinning now, a mad, feral expression. "You think I am alone? You think I did not plan for this?" He whistled sharply, and two more men emerged from the shadows near the barn, both armed. Owen's heart sank. 3 against 1 were not good odds, especially when the men he was facing were desperate and had nothing to lose. But he had been in tight spots before, and he was not about to give up now. He backed up slowly toward the house, keeping his gun trained on Vance. The door behind him opened, and Zara appeared, her face pale but determined. In her hands, she held Owen's rifle, which he had clearly grabbed from inside. Behind her, Owen could see James holding a shotgun, his young face set with the same determination as his mother's. "No one forces anyone while we are here," Zara said, her voice strong and clear, echoing the words Owen had spoken all those years ago. "Leave our land now, or we will defend what is ours." Vance's eyes widened with recognition as he looked at Zara. You were one of the women from the mine. I remember you now." "And I remember you," Zara replied coldly. "You ordered your men to beat Martha when she asked for water. You said we were animals who did not deserve kindness. Well, Mr. Vance, it turns out we were stronger than you thought. We survived, we thrived, we built good lives despite everything you did to us, and we are not going to let you take that away." For a long moment, nobody moved. The standoff seemed frozen in time, with both sides knowing that the next few seconds would determine everything. Then, from the direction of town, Owen heard the sound of horses approaching at a gallop. Sheriff Reynolds appeared with 4 deputies, all armed and ready. "Drop your weapons," the sheriff ordered, his voice carrying the full authority of the law. "Vance, you are under arrest for escape from federal custody. Your associates are under arrest for aiding and abetting. You can come quietly, or we can do this the hard way. Your choice." Vance looked around, realizing he was outnumbered and outgunned. The fight seemed to drain out of him all at once, and he slumped, defeated. His 2 associates laid down their weapons without argument. The deputies moved in to put them in shackles, and Sheriff Reynolds approached Owen and Zara. "Thank God you're all right," the sheriff said. "We got word that Vance had been spotted heading this way and rode out as fast as we could. Looks like we arrived just in time." "Just in time," Owen agreed, relief flooding through him. He turned to Zara and pulled her into his arms, the rifle still clutched in her hands. "You were amazing," he whispered into her hair, "fierce and brave and amazing." "I learned from the best," Zara replied, her voice shaking now that the danger had passed. "But Owen, I do not ever want to go through something like that again." "I know," Owen said. "I know. It is over now. He is going back to prison, and this time he is not getting out." Sheriff Reynolds cleared his throat. Actually, with the escape and the attempted assault, Vance is likely looking at a hanging. This will be his third violent offense. The judge will not show mercy. Owen nodded, feeling no satisfaction in the news, but grateful that the threat would be permanently removed. He ushered Zara and James back inside, where the younger children were huddled together, scared by the commotion. The family gathered around the dinner table, though no one had much appetite after the evening's events. They held hands and bowed their heads while Owen said a prayer of gratitude for their safety and protection. That night, after the children were finally asleep, Owen and Zara lay in bed together, holding each other close. "I thought we had left that life behind," Zara said quietly. "I thought we were safe." "We are safe," Owen assured her. "What happened tonight was the last gasp of a dead past. Vance cannot hurt us anymore. No one can. We have built something strong here, Zara, something that cannot be destroyed by one bitter man with a grudge." "I was so scared," Zara admitted. "Not for myself, but for you and the children. The thought of losing any of you was unbearable." "I know exactly how you feel," Owen said, "but we faced it together, and we came through it together. That is what we do. We face whatever comes as a team, as a family, and we always will." Zara was quiet for a moment, then said, "When I picked up that rifle, something changed inside me. I was not the terrified girl from the mine anymore. I was a woman defending her family, her home, her life. And I realized that you did not just save me that day 12 years ago. You gave me the strength to save myself." Owen kissed her forehead tenderly. "You always had that strength, Zara. You just needed the chance to use it, and you have used it every day since then, building this life, raising our children, standing beside me through everything. You are the strongest person I know." They fell asleep in each other's arms, secure in their love and their commitment to each other and their family. The next morning, life returned to normal, or as normal as life on a ranch with 4 children could be. The incident with Vance became a story they told, a reminder of where they had come from and how far they had traveled together. As the years rolled on, the Braddock Ranch became one of the most successful in the region. Owen's reputation for honesty and fair dealing brought him business from all over Colorado, and Zara's garden had expanded into a thriving operation that supplied vegetables to several towns. They employed several workers now, treating them fairly and paying them well, determined that no one who worked on their land would ever experience the kind of exploitation Zara and the other women had suffered. James grew into a fine young man who took over much of the day-to-day operations of the ranch as Owen began to slow down. The twins, Sarah and Grace, both married well. Sarah wed a lawyer from Denver and moved to the city, while Grace married a neighboring rancher's son and stayed close to home. Daniel, true to his childhood passion, became an engineer and went east to study at a prestigious university, though he promised to return to Colorado one day. In 1910, Owen and Zara celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary. Their children threw them a party that seemed to include half the county, with food and music and dancing that lasted late into the night. Martha was there, now elderly but still sharp as a tack, along with Sarah, Elizabeth, and Catherine. They had all built successful lives in Cannon City, and they remained close friends, bonded by the shared trauma that had brought them together and the strength that had allowed them to overcome it. As the party wound down and the guests began to drift away, Owen and Zara found themselves alone on the porch of their home, watching the stars come out over the mountains. It was a clear night, and the Milky Way stretched across the sky like a river of light. 25 years, Zara mused. It seems impossible that so much time has passed. It feels like just yesterday that you rode into my life and changed everything. Best day of my life, Owen said simply. The day I found you. The day I realized that there was something more important than just existing from one day to the next. You gave me purpose, Zara. You gave me love. You gave me a reason to build instead of just wander. We built it together, Zara corrected. Everything we have, everything we are, we created side by side. I could not have done any of it without you. Owen took her hand, the same hand he had held on their wedding day, now marked with the evidence of a life well lived. Do you ever regret it? Staying here instead of going to California like you planned? Not for a single second, Zara replied without hesitation. California was my family's dream, not mine. My dream was always to find a place where I belonged, where I was loved, where I could be truly happy. And I found all of that right here with you. This is where I was meant to be all along. They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching the night sky. Inside the house, they could hear their grandchildren laughing and playing. Sarah's daughter, Emma, and Grace's two boys, Thomas and William, were spending the night, and the house was alive with the energy of youth and possibility. "We have been blessed," Owen said quietly. "More than I ever thought possible. A wonderful marriage, healthy children, a successful business, good friends, and now grandchildren to spoil and love. What more could anyone ask for?" "Nothing," Zara agreed. "We have everything that matters." As they grew older, Owen and Zara began to slow down, spending more time enjoying their grandchildren and less time working the ranch. James had taken over full management, proving himself to be an even better rancher than his father. He had married a kind woman named Anna, and together they were raising 3 children on the ranch. The family legacy was secure. On a warm spring day in 1918, Owen and Zara took a ride out to the place where they had first confessed their love for each other, the spot overlooking the Arkansas River where Owen had proposed 33 years earlier. They rode slowly, both of them now in their 60s, their movements careful but still confident. They spread a blanket on the ground and shared a simple lunch of bread and cheese and apples, the same kind of meal they had shared on their first picnic. "Do you remember what you asked me that day?" Zara said, looking out over the river. "About what my heart wanted?" "Of course I remember," Owen replied. "I remember everything about that day." "You changed my life with that question," Zara continued, "because up until that moment, I had always put what other people wanted ahead of what I wanted, my family's dreams ahead of my own, society's expectations ahead of my own desires. But you asked me what my heart wanted, and you actually cared about the answer. You taught me that it was okay to choose my own path, to follow my own happiness." Owen reached out and took her hand, his weathered fingers intertwining with hers. "Your happiness has always been my happiness. Making sure you had the life you deserved, that has been my life's work. And I would say it has been work well done." "More than well done," Zara said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Owen Braddock, loving you has been the greatest adventure of my life, greater than any journey to California could ever have been. You are my home, and you always will be." They sat together as the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink and purple, the same colors that had illuminated the sky on the night they had first kissed. The river flowed below them, constant and eternal, a witness to their love story just as it had been from the beginning. As twilight fell and the first stars appeared, they packed up their picnic and rode slowly back to the ranch. The house was lit up with warm yellow light, and they could see their family moving about inside, preparing for dinner. Grandchildren played in the yard, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. This was what they had built together, a legacy of love and hard work and dedication that would continue long after they were gone. Owen helped Zara down from her horse, and they stood for a moment in the barnyard, looking at their home. "I love you, Zara Braddock," Owen said, the same words he had spoken thousands of times over the years, but meaning them just as deeply as he had the first time. "I love you too, Owen," Zara replied, standing on her toes to kiss him gently. "Today, tomorrow, and always." They walked hand in hand into the house, into the warmth and light and love that filled every corner, into the life they had built together from the ashes of tragedy and trauma. It was a life that proved that darkness does not have the final word, that love is stronger than cruelty, that hope can triumph over despair. It was a life that began with a cowboy who refused to let anyone be forced while he was there, and a woman who found the courage to claim her own happiness. And it was a life that proved, beyond any doubt, that sometimes the greatest treasures are found in the most unlikely places, and that true love can heal even the deepest wounds. The years continued to pass peacefully. Owen and Zara grew old together, their hair turning silver, their steps becoming slower, but their love remaining as strong and vibrant as ever. They spent their days surrounded by children and grandchildren, sharing stories of the old days, passing down wisdom and values that had served them well. In 1925, on a cool autumn evening, Owen passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 68, Zara holding his hand. The whole county turned out for his funeral, testimony to the respect and affection he had earned over his lifetime. He was buried on a hillside overlooking the ranch, with a view of the mountains he had loved so much. Zara lived for another 3 years, spending her time with her family, tending a small garden, and writing down the story of her life for her grandchildren and great-grandchildren to read. She wanted them to know where they came from, to understand the strength and courage that ran in their blood, to appreciate the power of love to transform lives. On a spring morning in 1928, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, Zara passed away peacefully at the age of 67. Her last words were Owen's name, spoken with love and longing. She was buried beside him on the hillside, their graves marked with simple headstones that bore their names and the dates of their births and deaths, along with a single-line inscription that told their whole story. 2 souls, 1 love, forever together. The ranch remained in the Braddock family, passed down through generations. James ran it until his own sons were old enough to take over, and they in turn passed it to their children. The story of Owen and Zara became family legend, told and retold at gatherings and celebrations, a reminder of where the family came from and the values they held dear. The small house where Owen and Zara had first lived was preserved and maintained, becoming a kind of shrine to their memory. Inside, their grandchildren and great-grandchildren would gather to look at the photographs on the walls, to touch the ring Owen had carved for Zara, to read the journals Zara had kept. They would stand in that parlor and try to imagine what it must have been like, to overcome such tragedy and build such a beautiful life. In Cannon City, a memorial was erected in the town square, honoring the 5 women who had survived the mine ordeal and the man who had saved them. It served as a reminder that heroism comes in many forms, that standing up for what is right matters, and that no one should ever be forced to do anything against their will. Martha, Sarah, Elizabeth, and Catherine were all remembered there, along with Zara and Owen, their names carved in stone for future generations to see and wonder about. The mine where the women had been imprisoned was sealed shut, a deliberate act to ensure that the place of so much suffering could never be used again. Over time, nature reclaimed it, vegetation growing over the entrance, until eventually it was almost impossible to tell it had ever been there at all. But those who knew the story made sure it was never forgotten, that the lessons learned from that dark time remained alive and relevant. The legacy of Owen and Zara Braddock extended far beyond their immediate family. Their example of courage, love, and resilience inspired countless others in Cannon City and beyond. Young couples would visit their graves and ask for blessings on their own marriages. People facing hard times would remember their story and find the strength to persevere. The values they had lived by became woven into the fabric of the community. As decades passed and the Wild West became history, as Colorado transformed from frontier territory to modern state, the story of the cowboy who saved the women from the mine remained a cherished tale. It was taught in schools as an example of heroism and justice. It was referenced in sermons as an illustration of standing up for the vulnerable. It was told around campfires and dinner tables, embellished perhaps, but always true in its essential details. Because in the end, the story of Owen and Zara was not just about a dramatic rescue or a romance. It was about the fundamental truth that human beings deserve dignity and freedom, that love can heal the deepest wounds, that courage comes in many forms, and that standing up for what is right, even at personal risk, is always worth it. It was about the power of 2 people to build something beautiful and lasting in a harsh and unforgiving world. It was a story about how the darkest moment of one person's life can become the catalyst for the greatest love story ever lived. How a cowboy passing through town at just the right moment can change the course of multiple lives forever. How a woman who had every reason to give up on happiness can find the courage to claim it when someone sees her true worth. The ranch thrived for generations, a testament to the foundation Owen and Zara had laid. By the time the 21st century arrived, it had become a tourist destination, with visitors coming from all over the world to see where the famous love story had unfolded. The current generation of Braddock still lived on the land, still ran cattle, still maintained the family traditions, proud of their heritage and committed to honoring the memory of their ancestors. In the town museum, a special exhibit was dedicated to Owen and Zara, featuring photographs, artifacts, and documents from their lives. The silver ring Owen had carved sat in a place of honor, protected behind glass, still beautiful after more than a century. Visitors would stand and look at it, marveling at the skill and love that had gone into its creation, and they would leave inspired to cherish their own loves more deeply. The house where they had raised their children was eventually transformed into a historical site, carefully restored to look exactly as it had during their lifetime. Guides would lead tours through the rooms, telling stories about the family who had lived there, pointing out the rocking chair where Zara had nursed her babies and the desk where Owen had kept the ranch accounts. In the bedroom, the bed where they had slept side by side for 33 years remained, covered with a quilt hand sewn by Zara's own hands. Every year on the anniversary of the rescue, the town held a celebration honoring Owen's heroism and the survival of the 5 women. It became a festival of sorts, with music and food and speeches. But at its heart, it was a remembrance of a dark moment in the town's history and the light that had emerged from it. Descendants of all 5 women would attend, sharing stories passed down through their families, ensuring that the memory of what had happened remained vivid and real. The story served another important purpose as well. It reminded people that human trafficking and forced labor were not just historical problems, but ongoing ones that required vigilance and action. Organizations fighting modern-day slavery would reference Owen's words, "No one forces anyone while I'm here," as a rallying cry for their work. The story became a call to action, inspiring people to stand up against injustice wherever they found it. For those who believed in soulmates, Owen and Zara were the ultimate proof that such things existed. 2 people who had found each other against all odds, in the worst possible circumstances, and had built a love that transcended time and death. Their graves on the hillside became a pilgrimage site for romantics who would leave flowers and notes asking for the kind of love Owen and Zara had shared. And perhaps that was the greatest legacy of all. Not the ranch or the money or the descendants, as important as those things were, but the proof that true love exists, that it can be found in the most unexpected places, and that it has the power to transform everything. Owen had been a lonely cowboy drifting from place to place with no roots and no real purpose. Zara had been a captive woman who had lost everything and everyone she loved. But together, they had created a life full of meaning, joy, and love that continued to inspire others more than a century after their deaths. On quiet evenings, when the sun set over the Colorado mountains and the first stars appeared in the vast sky, locals swore they could sometimes see 2 figures standing on the hillside where Owen and Zara were buried. They would be holding hands, looking out over the ranch they had built together, watching over the descendants who carried their blood and their values into the future. It was probably just imagination or tricks of the light, but it was a beautiful thought nonetheless. The idea that love like theirs could not be contained even by death, that it lingered on in the places where it had flourished, eternal and unchanging. The complete story of Owen Braddock and Zara Green was one that proved the best things in life often come from the worst circumstances. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. That love is not just a feeling, but a choice made every day to put another person's needs and happiness alongside your own. That family is built not just through blood, but through loyalty, sacrifice, and shared values passed from one generation to the next. It was a story that belonged to the Wild West, but transcended its time and place to speak universal truths about human nature, justice, love, and redemption. A story that began with violence and trauma, but ended with peace and fulfillment. A story that proved darkness does not get the final word, that good can triumph over evil, and that a single act of courage can ripple forward through time to touch countless lives. Owen and Zara had lived and loved and left behind something greater than themselves. Their story was complete, their journey ended, but their legacy lived on in every child who bore their name, in every couple who looked at their example and resolved to love better, in every person who heard their story and decided to stand up against injustice. They had started with nothing but each other and built an empire of love that would endure as long as people valued courage, compassion, and commitment. And so, the story of the cowboy, who found women working the mine under threat and declared that no one would be forced while he was there, became immortal. Not because it was written in books or commemorated in monuments, though it was both, but because it touched something fundamental in the human spirit. The longing for justice, the hope for true love, the belief that one person can make a difference, the faith that good will ultimately prevail. Owen and Zara Braddock had lived a remarkable life together, one that deserved to be remembered and celebrated. From that terrible day at the mine to their final peaceful years surrounded by family, they had shown what was possible when courage met compassion and love conquered fear. Their story was complete, their ending was happy, and their love would echo through generations, inspiring others to be brave, to stand up for what was right, and to never give up on the possibility of finding true and lasting love even in the most unlikely circumstances.